Yield the balance to Representative Speier.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Thank you, gentlemen, for your service to our country. You know, I think it's really important as we sit here that we explain this to the American people in a way that they can understand it. Why are we talking about all of this? So my first question to each of you is Russia our adversary? Mr. Comey?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Do they intend to do us harm?
They intend to ensure, I believe, that they gain advantage at our expense.
Director Comey?
Yes, I want to be, harm can have many meanings. They're an adversary, and so they want to resist us.
One of the terms that we hear often is hybrid warfare. And I'd like to just give a short definition of what it is. It blends conventional warfare, irregular warfare, and cyber warfare. The aggressor intends to avoid attribution or retribution. So would you say that Russia engaged in hybrid warfare in its effort to undermine our democratic process and engage in our electoral process? Director Comey?
I don't think I would use the term warfare. I think you'd want to ask experts in the definition of war. They engaged in a multifaceted campaign of active measures to undermine our democracy and hurt one of the candidates and hope to help one of the other candidates.
I'd agree with the director.
All right. Well, thank you both. I actually think that their engagement was an act of war, an act of hybrid warfare, and I think that's why the American people should be concerned about it. Now, in terms of trying to understand this, I think of a spider web with a tarantula in the middle. And the tarantula, in my view, is Vladimir Putin, who is entrapping many people to do his bidding and to engage with him. And I would include those like Roger Stone and Carter Page and Michael Caputo and Wilbur Ross and Paul Manafort and Rex Tillerson. I'd like to focus first on Rex Tillerson in the 3 minutes I have here. He was the CEO of ExxonMobil. In 2008, he said that the likelihood of U.S.-Russia businesses was, in fact, a poor investment, that Russia was a poor investment climate. That was in 2008. In 2011, he closed a $500 billion deal with Rosneft Oil. The CEO of Rosneft is Igor Sechin, who is a confidant of President Putin, second most powerful man in Russia, and probably a former KGB agent. The deal gives Exxon access to the Black Sea and the Kara Sea and Siberia for oil development. Rosneft gets minority interests in Exxon, in Texas, and the Gulf. Rex Tillerson calls Sechin a good friend. In 2012, Mr. Tillerson and Mr. Sechin go on a road show here in the United States to talk about this great deal that they had just consummated. Also in 2012, there's a video of President Putin and Mr. Tillerson toasting champagne at the deal. And in 2013, Mr. Tillerson receives the Russian Order of Friendship. And he sits right next to President Putin at the event. So my question to you, Director Comey, is it of value to President Putin, knowing what you know of him and that his interest in doing harm to us, is it of benefit to Mr. Putin to have Rex Tillerson as the Secretary of State?
I can't answer that question.
Admiral Rogers?
Ma'am, I'm not in a position to answer that question.
All right. So in 2014, Igor Sechin is sanctioned. And he laments that he no longer will be able to come to the United States to motorcycle ride with Mr. Tillerson. Could you give me an understanding of what are some of the reasons that we impose sanctions? Director Comey?
On Sechin,
Well, just in general.
again, you'd have to ask an expert, but from my general knowledge, it's to punish activities that are criminal in nature, that involve war crimes, that involve violations of UN resolutions or United States law in some other way. It's to communicate and enforce foreign policy interests and values of the United States of America. That's my general sense, but an expert might describe it much better.
Admiral Rogers?
I would echo the director's comments. It's also a tool that we use to attempt to drive and shape the choices and actions of others.
So in the case of Igor Sechin, who was sanctioned by the United States in part to draw attention to the fact that Russia had invaded Crimea, it's an effort to try and send a very strong message to Russia. Is that not true?
I think that's right.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back for now.